What happens when the person hired to clean up your mess is the only one who can expose the filth you hide? Before we dive into this insane story of revenge, power, and the sweet, sweet taste of justice, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Goliath Chronicles. You think you know stories about the underdog? You have no idea. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss a single detail of how a woman with a mop and bucket brought a billion-dollar empire to its knees. Some people are born with a silver spoon so far up their ass, they can taste the polish. Serafina Sterling Vaughn was one of them. Her words, sharp and cold as the diamond on her finger, cut through the humid Houston air. You people really need to learn your place. She ground the pointed heel of her Manolo Blahnik into the freshly polished marble floor of the Apex Tower lobby, a floor that Alani Reyes had just spent the last hour perfecting. A deliberate, ugly black scar marred the gleaming surface. A heavy, cream-colored invitation slapped onto Alani's cleaning cart, landing precariously close to a spray bottle of Windex. "You should come to our foundation's gala," Serafina sneered, her tennis bracelet, a casual river of diamonds, catching the harsh fluorescent light. "We always welcome the help." Her laugh wasn't a sound of joy, it was the noise of shattering glass echoing down the empty corridor. The cloying scent of Serafina's $900 a bottle Baccarat Rouge perfume mingled with the sharp, clean smell of lemon disinfectant. It was a toxic cocktail, just like the smile plastered on her perfectly made-up face. As if to punctuate her cruelty, Serafina's heel struck the side of Alani's industrial-grade bucket. Crack! Gray water exploded outwards, a filthy wave that soaked the worn, rubber-soled shoes Alani had been wearing for the past 3 years. "Clean that up before you go," Serafina commanded, her tone bored, as if she were talking to a piece of furniture. "Harrison has a board meeting at 7 a.m. She turned on her heel, the red sole of her shoe flashing like a warning light, already dismissing the woman whose work and dignity she had just trampled. Alani watched the dirty water seep into the grout lines, a dark stain spreading across the white marble. 45 years old, a Master of Business Administration from the University of Texas. And here she was, the executive manager for Trinity Pro Cleaning Services, instead of the corporate strategist she was trained to be. She was an expert in commercial maintenance, the holder of 3 patent-pending systems that could literally revolutionize the industry, and she was completely invisible to the woman who had just undone an hour of her meticulous labor without a second thought. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her daughter, Sophia. "Mom, remember what you always say? Walk into every room like you fucking own it. When are you gonna start taking your own advice?" Alani's fingers, calloused from years of hard work, tightened around the smooth handle of her mop. Perhaps sooner than anyone, least of all Serafina Sterling Vaughn, could possibly imagine. "I'll consider it," Alani said, her voice impossibly steady, a calm sea over a raging storm in her throat. Serafina, already halfway to the elevator bank, froze mid-stride. She turned back, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched in disbelief. "Oh, honey," she cooed, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's $10,000 a plate." Her smile sharpened, becoming a weapon. "I was just being... what's that word everyone's using? Inclusive. You know, the board's diversity initiative and all that." Alani said nothing. She was already calculating the precise chemical mixture and polishing technique required to remove the scuff mark without etching the delicate marble. Some stains, she knew, ran far deeper than the surface, and some took a hell of a lot more than soap and water to clean up. Apex Tower, a gleaming monument of steel and glass piercing the Houston sky, was the headquarters of Vaughn Global Enterprises, a $10 billion commercial real estate empire built on a foundation of ruthless acquisition and so-called urban renewal. They were masters of the hostile takeover, executed with smiling faces and press releases that spoke of community revitalization. In reality, their projects displaced entire neighborhoods, replacing generational homes and small businesses with luxury condos and sterile corporate plazas. Alani knew their playbook intimately. Years before she ever donned the navy blue uniform with the embroidered Trinity Pro logo, she had sat in this very building across a polished mahogany desk from Harrison Vaughn himself. She had submitted her resume, a resume that boasted a 4.0 GPA and a groundbreaking thesis on sustainable urban development. He'd rejected her without a second thought. "Not the right fit," he'd said, his eyes barely scanning the qualifications she had sacrificed so much to earn. He didn't recognize her now, of course. To him, and to his wife, the uniform rendered her invisible, a ghost who polished their world and disappeared before dawn. Tonight, the 80th floor boardroom required special attention. Pushing her cart through the silent, cavernous halls, Alani used her master key to enter the nerve center of Vaughn Global. As she expected, papers were scattered across the massive conference table. Confidential files, acquisition targets, 3 minority-owned businesses in the historic Fifth Ward, all struggling to stay afloat after the economic downturn. The handwritten notes in the margins were brutally explicit. Leverage financial distress. Offer 30% below market. Emphasize their limited options. It was a predator's diary. Something else caught her eye, tucked carelessly into a leather portfolio. Financial documents for Serafina's pet project, the Sterling Vaughn Future Leaders Foundation. The numbers were wrong. They didn't align. Alani could see massive donations flowing in from Vaughn Global's corporate partners, donations that likely secured them favorable contracts. But the distributions flowing out were laughably small. Most of the funds were being funneled into a labyrinth of offshore accounts, all vaguely labeled administrative expenses and consulting fees. Alani, a woman who had managed budgets and balanced spreadsheets to the penny her whole life, knew a shell game when she saw one. Her hand trembled almost imperceptibly as she pulled out her phone, quietly snapping crystal-clear photos of every incriminating page. The distant ding of an elevator startled her. Voices were approaching. With practiced speed, Alani arranged the papers back into their folders, her posture shifting, melting back into the submissive, unassuming stance expected of the cleaning staff. Harrison Vaughn entered first, a silver-haired titan in a bespoke Brioni suit, radiating the unshakable confidence that came with old money and a Harvard Business School degree. At 62, he had transformed his father's modest construction company into a corporate behemoth. Clinging to his arm was Serafina, 19 years his junior, his third wife, her second husband. "The cleaning lady is still here," Serafina noted, her voice laced with annoyance, as if Alani's very presence was an inconvenience. Harrison barely glanced in her direction. "Just work around us. We won't be long. Boitum." But here's the question that hangs in the air of that silent, opulent boardroom. Will Alani remain invisible to these people who build their fortunes by stepping on the necks of others? Or has Serafina Sterling Vaughn finally, fatally, targeted the wrong woman? Alani arrived before sunrise on Monday to find Marcus Thorne, the owner of Trinity Pro Cleaning Services, pacing anxiously in the service bay. His usual jovial smile was gone, replaced by a deep crease of worry on his forehead. "Vaughn Global is reviewing all their vendor contracts," he said, his voice low and strained. He ran a hand over his tired face. "That's 40% of our business, Alani. 40%. I can't lose this contract." A cold pit formed in Alani's stomach. "Did they say why?" "Apparently," Marcus said, finally looking at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and apology. "Someone complained about staff conduct. A board member's wife." The knot in Alani's chest tightened into a vice. It was Serafina. This was her petty, vindictive revenge for the gala exchange, a power play to remind Alani of her place. "I'll speak with her," Alani offered, her voice firm. "I'll apologize, smooth it over." "No." Marcus's voice was sharper than she'd ever heard it. "That's exactly what you can't do. Don't go anywhere near her. Promise me you'll just keep your head down, do your job and leave. 16 families depend on this contract, Alani." Alani thought of her team. Maria, a single mother saving every spare dollar for her son's college tuition. Abdul, sending money back home to support his entire extended family in Somalia. Luis, working 2 jobs to pay for his wife's mounting medical bills. They were good, hard-working people, and their livelihoods were now hanging by a thread because Serafina Vaughn felt disrespected. "I promise," she said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. As Marcus left, the main service elevator doors opened. Evelyn Reed, Vaughn Global's chief financial officer, stepped out. Dressed in a severe charcoal suit, her phone pressed to her ear, Evelyn was a rare creature in the Apex Tower. At 50, she was the highest-ranking woman in the company, a shark in a tank of sharks, and the only executive who ever made a point of nodding a greeting to Alani. It was a small gesture, but in this world of enforced invisibility, it felt monumental. "I understand the contract review, Harrison," Evelyn was saying into her phone, her voice crisp and authoritative. "But slashing costs by hiring undocumented workers is a PR nightmare waiting to happen, not to mention the legal liability." She stopped short, noticing Alani. "I'll call you back." She gave Alani that familiar, respectful nod. "Ms. Reyes." "Ms. Reed," Alani replied. "Your team does exceptional work," Evelyn said, her gaze direct. "I notice, particularly your attention to detail on the executive floor." "Thank you, ma'am. We take pride in our work." Just then, Marcus, having forgotten his briefcase, hurried back. He saw Evelyn and his face lit up with a desperate hope. He quickly introduced himself, his hand extended. Evelyn's handshake was firm, no nonsense. "Your team is excellent," she repeated. "Ms. Reyes, in particular, runs a tight ship." Marcus beamed, seizing the opportunity. "Alani's our best, the absolute cream of the crop. MBA from UT Austin, if you can believe it. Overqualified doesn't even begin to cover it." Something flickered in Evelyn Reed's sharp, intelligent eyes. A spark of interest. "Is that so?" she murmured, her gaze lingering on Alani for a moment longer than necessary, before she turned and walked toward the executive offices. That afternoon, Alani was quietly polishing the credenza outside Harrison Vaughn's office when she heard Serafina's voice, shrill and imperious, carrying through the partially open door. "I don't give a damn about the liability, Harrison." That cleaning woman looked at me. The disrespect was palpable. "Find another service. I want them gone." There was a pause, and then Harrison's deeper, more measured tone. "Evelyn strongly advises against it. Something about worker protections and potential lawsuits." "Since when do you care what Evelyn thinks?" Serafina shot back. "She's a glorified accountant. I want them gone. End of story." Alani slipped away, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Her team. 16 people with families, mortgages, dreams, and medical bills. All of their futures were on the line because Serafina Vaughn, a woman who had never known a single day of real struggle, felt she had been looked at disrespectfully. Later, while restocking the executive kitchen, Alani found herself in the middle of a lunch Serafina was hosting for her charity board, a group of equally wealthy, impeccably dressed women. Serafina spotted her from across the room, her eyes narrowing into cruel slits. "Perfect timing," she announced, her voice ringing with false cheer. "Fresh coffee, please. The decaf this time." Alani prepared the ridiculously expensive, single-origin brew, her movements precise and economical. She served Serafina first, placing the delicate porcelain cup on its saucer. Serafina accepted it without a word of acknowledgement. Then, while maintaining direct, unwavering eye contact with Alani, she deliberately tipped the cup, sending a river of hot, black coffee cascading over the freshly mopped, gleaming white floor. "Oops," Serafina said, her lips curving into a smug, triumphant smile. "Accidents happen." From the doorway, Evelyn Reed observed the entire interaction, her expression unreadable. When Serafina and her friends moved into the adjoining conference room, cackling like hens, Evelyn approached Alani. Alani was already on her knees, mopping up the spill. "Some stains run deeper than others, Mrs. Vaughn," Alani said quietly, her voice devoid of emotion as she worked the mop. "But everything can be cleaned, if you have the right solution." Evelyn Reed's eyebrow raised just a fraction of an inch. "An interesting perspective, Ms. Reyes," she said, her voice a low murmur. "A very interesting perspective indeed. The question is no longer just about Alani. It's bigger now. Will she be able to save the jobs of 16 innocent people, including her own? Or is the weight of Serafina's cruelty about to crush them all? This is the moment where a victim either stays a victim or starts to become a threat. Stick with us." After her shift officially ended, Alani didn't go home. Instead, she remained in the silent, empty skyscraper, making her way to a forgotten maintenance closet on a sub-level floor. For the past 3 years, this tiny, windowless room was where she had spent her lunch breaks and countless overtime hours. It was her laboratory, her sanctuary, her secret. She had transformed it into a workspace, a place where the brilliant strategist with the MBA could finally breathe. Here, she had developed her patented cleaning system, a revolutionary trifecta of eco-friendly chemical solutions, ultra-efficient application methods, and a water reclamation process that was nothing short of genius. Independent lab tests, paid for with her meager savings, confirmed her results. 40% less water usage, a 63% reduction in chemical waste, and 28% faster completion times compared to industry standards. This closet held more than just carefully labeled samples, prototype applicators, and binders filled with research. It held her dreams of a future free from Serafina Vaughn, a future where she was seen for her mind, not her uniform. Tomorrow she had a meeting. A real one, with investors from Breakthrough Ventures, a firm that specialized in funding minority-owned startups. She'd already been rejected by 5 other firms, but this one felt different. Hope, after so many years of disappointment, felt like a dangerous, fragile thing. The door to the closet swung open so suddenly it banged against the wall. Serafina Sterling Vaughn stood there, her expression shifting from surprise to a kind of predatory amusement. "Working late?" she purred. Her dismissive gaze swept over Alani's meticulously organized presentation materials. "What is all this?" Alani instinctively straightened up, moving to block the view of her work. "It's a research project." Serafina's eyes gleamed. She stepped into the tiny space, picking up one of Alani's prototype applicator wands. "Playing inventor on company time? Naughty, naughty." Her phone appeared in her hand, as if by magic. "I think Harrison will find this very interesting." "It's my lunch break," Alani said, her voice tight. "And that is proprietary technology." Ignoring her, Serafina began snapping photos of Alani's diagrams, her complex chemical formulas, the executive summary of her business plan. "Proprietary?" she said, her laugh sharp and humorless. "A cleaning lady with patents. How positively adorable." "Please don't touch those," Alani said, her voice low and dangerous, as she reached for the main research binder that Serafina was now flipping through with manicured fingers. "Or what?" Serafina's voice hardened, the faux amusement gone, replaced by pure venom. You'll complain to HR about the CEO's wife. She took several more photos, the flash illuminating the cramped closet. Know your place. The next morning, Alani received a terse email. Her investor meeting had been canceled. No explanation given. By afternoon, a press release from Vaughn Global hit the newswires. It announced a bold new sustainability initiative in commercial cleaning technology, one that sounded eerily, sickeningly familiar to Alani's own system. The press release featured a glamorous photo of Serafina, who was quoted extensively. Mrs. Serafina Sterling Vaughn has developed an innovative, eco-conscious approach to cleaning methods that will revolutionize the industry, the release gushed, all while creating opportunities for disadvantaged communities through her charitable foundation. Alani felt the floor drop out from under her. She found Serafina in the executive restroom, touching up her lipstick in the mirror as if she didn't have a care in the world. "You stole my work," Alani said, her voice a raw whisper. She blocked the doorway, trapping them both inside. Serafina barely glanced at her reflection in the mirror. "Don't be so dramatic. I simply improved upon some very basic concepts that, frankly, anyone could have developed." "I have documented proof." Alani's voice grew stronger, fueled by a righteous, white-hot fury. "Proof of prior development. Patent applications filed months ago." Serafina finally turned, her eyes as cold and dead as a winter sky. "And who, exactly, is going to believe a cleaning lady invented this over the CEO's wife?" She took a step closer, her perfume suffocating. "No. Your place." Alani didn't move. She didn't flinch. In her pocket, her phone was silently recording every single word. "You've made a terrible mistake," Alani said quietly. Serafina stepped even closer, until she was inches from Alani's face. "No, sweetheart, you have. Cross me again, and Trinity Pro Cleaning loses a lot more than just this contract. 3 years of innovation. A lifetime of struggle. Is it all about to be stolen by a woman who's never worked an honest day in her life? What do you do when the system is designed for you to lose? You don't play by the rules. You change the entire goddamn game." 2 weeks later, Serafina hosted a lavish pre-gala luncheon to showcase her charitable innovations. Marcus, terrified of losing the contract, assigned Alani to staff the event, despite her furious objections. "We can't afford to upset her anymore," he pleaded, his eyes begging her to understand. "Just keep your head down, please." The grand ballroom of the Post Oak Hotel was overflowing with Houston's wealthiest donors, socialites, and fawning members of the press. Alani moved through the crowd with a tray of champagne flutes, invisible as always. Serafina, glowing under the admiring attention, stood at a podium, presenting Alani's cleaning system as her own brilliant brainchild. "My foundation is dedicated to identifying holistic solutions for underprivileged communities," she explained to a reporter from the Houston Chronicle. "These revolutionary cleaning methods not only provide safer working conditions, but also protect our precious environment." Then, Serafina spotted Alani serving champagne nearby. A cruel, opportunistic glint appeared in her eye. She waved Alani over. "Everyone, everyone! I want you to meet my inspiration," Serafina announced to the captive audience, gripping Alani's shoulder in a surprisingly strong grasp. She pushed down slightly, a subtle but unmistakable gesture of dominance. "This woman has shown me just how much the underprivileged can be helped by my vision." Alani refused to buckle. She maintained her posture, her spine straight as steel, even as Serafina's hand tried to force her into a servile position. The room, oblivious, erupted in applause for Serafina's supposed compassion. "Perhaps she could demonstrate the proper cleaning technique for us," Serafina suggested, her eyes glittering with malice, trying to bait Alani into a public humiliation. Alani remained perfectly still, her face a mask of professional calm. she would not give her the satisfaction. Another time, perhaps, Serafina conceded with a tight smile when Alani didn't respond. She's shy. After the presentation, Evelyn Reed found Alani in a quiet service corridor. That was an interesting presentation, Evelyn said, her tone neutral. Those chemical formulations she described seemed quite technical for a layperson. Alani remained silent, her jaw tight. I've seen similar concepts before, Evelyn continued, her sharp eyes studying Alani's face. In patent applications. Alani's head snapped up. Evelyn handed her a simple, elegant business card. My private number. Call me. Is this the ally Alani has been waiting for? Or just another player in a game where she's always been the pawn? It's hard to know who to trust when you're at the bottom, but sometimes the enemy of your enemy is the best friend you could ever ask for. That evening, a text lit up Alani's phone, a beacon in the darkness of her crushing defeat. It was from Sophia. Mom, I got it! Vaughn Global Summer Associate Program. Pride and a sickening dread collided in Alani's chest. Sophia had worked relentlessly for this. A 4.0 GPA at Rice University, a double major in finance and economics. She was perfect for the prestigious internship that was a direct pipeline to Wall Street. But the thought of her brilliant, hopeful daughter entering Serafina Vaughn's orbit, of being in that viper's sphere of influence, made Alani's skin crawl. Before she could formulate a reply, another message came through. Why aren't you excited? This is everything we've been working for. I am excited, Mika, Alani typed back, the lie feeling heavy on her fingertips. So proud. Let's celebrate tonight. 3 days later, Alani was cleaning the executive parking garage after hours, the cavernous concrete space echoing with the hum of her floor polisher. A sleek, black Escalade screeched to a halt just inches from her cart. Serafina emerged, her face a mask of incandescent rage. Your daughter, she spat, the words dripping with venom. Sophia Reyes, the new summer associate. Alani froze, her blood turning to ice. What about her? Serafina moved closer, backing Alani against a cold, concrete pillar. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That you could plant your spawn in my husband's company as some kind of spy? She earned that position, Alani said, her voice shaking but firm. She was top of her class. Spare me, Serafina hissed, her eyes narrowing. Here's what's going to happen now. You are going to behave. No more ridiculous accusations. No more attitude. You will do your job with a smile on your face, or your ambitious little daughter is going to learn exactly how the world really works for people like you. Are you threatening my child? I'm explaining consequences, Serafina's cruel smile returned. Summer associates are evaluated very subjectively. It would be such a shame if a promising young career were to end before it even began. The Escalade's engine roared to life, and she sped away, leaving Alani trembling in the echoing darkness. Will Alani sacrifice her own fight, her own justice to protect her daughter's future? Or will this threat against the one person she loves more than life itself be the final push she needs to burn their whole corrupt world to the ground? Alani's small apartment felt like it was closing in on her. The walls were covered in her life's contradictions. Spread across her dining table were her business plans, her patent applications, and a small pile of rejection letters. 3 years of hope and disappointment laid bare. Her navy blue cleaning uniform hung on the back of her bedroom door, directly opposite her framed MBA diploma from the University of Texas. 2 worlds that were never supposed to intersect. This modest 2-bedroom apartment in Houston's East End had been their sanctuary for 15 years. Every piece of furniture told a story of sacrifice and love. The second-hand couch where she'd read bedtime stories to a toddler Sophia. The dining table where they'd tackled homework together, Alani studying for her MBA exams while Sophia colored beside her. This was the home she had built, the life she had fought for. And now, Serafina Vaughn was threatening to tear it all down. She buried her face in her hands, the hypocrisy of her own life burning like acid in her throat. For years, she'd taught Sophia to stand tall, to speak up, to never let anyone diminish her worth, all while she silently endured Serafina's daily degradations. The front door opened, and Sophia burst in, her usual excitement fading the moment she saw her mother's face. "What happened?" she asked, dropping her backpack and rushing to Alani's side. "Nothing, Mija," Alani said automatically, the protective lie a reflex. "Mom." Sophia's voice was firm now, no longer a child's. "Stop it. I'm not a kid anymore. Tell me." And so the story spilled out. The stolen patents, the threatened contract, and finally, Serafina's veiled threat against Sophia's internship. With each word, a deep, burning shame crawled up Alani's spine. She had tried to protect her daughter from the ugliness of the world, and in doing so, she had failed to protect herself. Sophia listened in silence, her expression hardening. When Alani finished, Sophia walked over to the wall and took down the framed diploma. She held it in her hands. "You've spent my entire life teaching me to never let anyone make me feel small," Sophia said, her voice quiet but fierce. "So why are you letting this woman do it to you? To us? It's complicated." "No, it's not." Sophia's eyes, the same determined eyes of the grandmother she was named after, flashed with an inherited fire. "You are smarter than her. You are stronger than her. You always have been." Alani closed her eyes, and the years fell away. She was back at UT 15 years earlier, sleep-deprived and running on caffeine and pure grit, a single mother in Professor Miller's advanced corporate strategy class. She had challenged the conclusion of a case study. "With all due respect, Professor," she had said, her heart pounding, "this acquisition strategy prioritizes short-term shareholder returns at the expense of sustainable community growth." Professor Miller had laughed, a dismissive, patronizing sound. "Ms. Reyes, perhaps you should focus on completing the assignment as written. Executive-level strategy may not be your natural strength." The implicit bias, the casual sexism and racism hung thick in the air. But Alani hadn't backed down. "Actually," she had continued, her voice steady, "the financials in Appendix C show this exact approach resulted in a 24% devaluation of the acquired company within 18 months. An alternative strategy, outlined on page 47 of the report, would have yielded 16% sustainable growth." Silence. Professor Miller fumbled with the documents. Then, a voice from the back of the room cut through the tension. "Ms. Reyes is correct. It was a guest lecturer, a rising star from a major consulting firm. Excellent analysis." After class, the woman had approached her. "You have sharp instincts. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." That guest lecturer's name was Evelyn Reed. The memory crystallized something inside Alani. She had stood her ground then, armed with nothing but her intelligence and the facts. Doors had still closed. Interviews had still ended with "not the right fit." But she had not been broken. She opened her eyes, meeting Sophia's determined gaze. "You're right," Alani said, a new resolve hardening her voice. "This ends now." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Alani answered, her heart skipping a beat. "Ms. Reyes? This is Evelyn Reed. Are you available to meet tomorrow? There's something we need to discuss." They met at a small, unassuming coffee shop 10 blocks from the Apex Tower. No chance of being seen. Evelyn arrived in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, almost unrecognizable without her corporate armor. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the booth, skipping the usual corporate pleasantries. "Your message sounded urgent," Alani replied. Evelyn glanced around the cafe before placing a sleek leather portfolio on the table. I've been tracking Serafina's activities for months. Why? When the CFO of a $10 billion company identifies seven-figure administrative expenses with no documentation, it becomes my business, Evelyn said dryly. She opened the portfolio. Serafina's charity is a sham. It's a shell company designed to launder money and evade taxes. She slid several documents across the table. Offshore accounts, falsified board minutes, forged signatures. Alani stared at the evidence, a dizzying trail of donor funds being used for personal expenses, designer clothes, jewelry, a vacation property in Turks and Caicos, all disguised as community outreach. Why are you showing this to me? Alani asked, her mind racing. Because sometimes the most powerful position in the room is the one nobody notices, Evelyn said, her gaze intense. You see everything from where you stand, don't you, Ms. Reyes? What do you want from me? Evidence I can't access? Evelyn's voice hardened. Conversations I'm not privy to. Board meetings where I'm conveniently excluded. I need what's inside the room. You want me to spy for you. I want justice, Evelyn corrected her. Harrison is letting his wife's greed and vanity destroy what could be an ethical, profitable company. Serafina is stealing money meant for educational programs for kids who need it. And now, she paused, they are stealing your intellectual property. Alani's head snapped up. How did you know? I review all new corporate initiatives. I recognized your formulations from the patent databases immediately. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They think we're invisible, Alani. They think we'll just stand by and take it. That's about to become a very expensive mistake for them. I've been fighting this battle alone for years, Alani said, the weight of that solitude heavy in her voice. Why should I trust you now? Evelyn was silent for a moment. 15 years ago, University of Texas, Professor Miller's strategy class. Alani's breath caught in her throat. That was you? I never forgot that student, Evelyn said with a slight smile. The one who stood her ground, even when the whole room was trying to silence her. I've been watching your career from a distance, wondering why someone with your talent never reached her potential. Now I understand who was blocking your path. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership, Evelyn said, her eyes gleaming with strategic brilliance. You provide me with the final pieces of evidence I need to expose Serafina. In return, I protect your daughter's position and ensure your patents remain yours. And together, she held Alani's gaze, we take back this company from the people who don't deserve to run it. That night, Alani's apartment became a war room. She called her pro bono patent lawyer. She called former classmates now in key corporate positions. She built a network, a silent army. A strategy began to form, intricate and beautiful in its audacity. The following weekend, Alani and Sophia went shopping. They went to a small boutique in the Heights, owned by a former Vaughn global executive who'd been forced out by Serafina. The owner helped Alani select a gown for the gala, an elegant midnight blue dress, subtle yet commanding. You're really going through with this? Sophia asked, as Alani stared at her transformed reflection in the mirror. I am, Alani said. Sophia walked over and adjusted the shoulder of the gown. Walk in like you already own the company, Mom, she whispered. Walk in and take it. How does a cleaning lady, armed with nothing but the truth and her own brilliance, outmaneuver people who have spent their entire lives stepping on others to get ahead? You're about to find out. The ballroom at the Post Oak Hotel was a glittering galaxy of Houston's elite. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto tables, laden with white orchids and polished silver. At the entrance, Serafina Sterling Vaughn, resplendent in a crimson gown that cost more than Alani's annual salary, greeted the city's most powerful politicians, oil barons, and socialites. At $10,000 a plate, the event had raised over $3 million for the Sterling Vaughan Future Leaders Fund. Money Alani knew was destined for a Caribbean bank account, not a college scholarship. Harrison Vaughan stood nearby, a bored king surveying his court, more interested in cornering a potential investor than in his wife's social triumph. Evelyn Reed arrived alone, offering Serafina a nod so brief it was almost an insult before sweeping into the room. Serafina's smile tightened, but her attention was quickly diverted. At 8:17 p.m., exactly 17 minutes after the gala's official start time, the grand ballroom doors opened one last time. Alani Reyes stepped through. The midnight blue gown flowed around her, subtle silver threads catching the light. Her hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and the simple diamond earrings her mother had left her were her only jewelry. It was a complete and stunning transformation. A ripple of silence spread outwards from the entrance. Conversations faltered. Champagne glasses paused mid-air. Serafina's practiced greeting died on her lips as she turned to see the source of the disruption. For 3 years, Serafina had looked through Alani. Now, for the first time, she truly saw her. Recognition dawned in her eyes, quickly followed by pure, undiluted outrage. She moved to intercept Alani, her red gown swishing like a matador's cape. "The staff is supposed to use the service entrance, honey," she hissed, her voice low and menacing. Suddenly, Evelyn was at Alani's side. "Serafina," she said, her voice cool and clear, "I'd like to introduce my special guest and potential new business partner, Alani Reyes." Serafina's perfectly painted mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She was speechless. She's our cleaning lady." "Tonight," Alani said, meeting Serafina's furious gaze without flinching. "I'm not here to clean, I'm here to collect." She and Evelyn moved past the stunned Serafina and into the heart of the ballroom. Whispers trailed in their wake like the train of a gown. "Who is she?" "That's Vaughan's housekeeping manager." Why did Reed just call her a business partner? Alani navigated the glittering crowd with an ease that belied her pounding heart. Years of silent observation had been her education. She knew who was allied with whom, who was nursing a grudge, who was loyal only to the highest bidder. Information gathered while invisible had just become power now that she was seen. Harrison Vaughan, finally noticing the woman who was inexplicably commanding the attention of his most important board members, approached them. "Ms. Reed." He nodded curtly to Evelyn, then turned his practiced politician's smile on Alani. "I don't believe we've had the pleasure." He extended his hand. "Harrison Vaughan." "We have met, actually," Alani replied, her handshake firm and steady. "Several times." Confusion flickered across his face. "I'm sorry, you look familiar." "I've cleaned your office every night for the last 3 years," Alani said, her voice carrying just enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "And before that, you rejected my application for your strategic development team. The view is certainly different from where I'm standing now." The color drained from Harrison's face. "I see. Well, welcome to our event." "I'm enjoying it immensely," Alani replied smoothly, "though I am particularly curious about your company's new sustainability initiative, the one that utilizes my patented technology." Harrison blinked, utterly blindsided. "I'm afraid I don't. Your wife has been quite vocal about presenting it as her own innovation," Alani continued, her voice like silk-wrapped steel. "Perhaps we should discuss an appropriate licensing agreement before my attorneys get involved." Harrison shot a desperate look at Serafina, who was now watching their exchange with unconcealed panic. "There seems to be some confusion," he began. "There is no confusion," Evelyn interjected calmly. Ms. Reyes holds verified patents for the systems your wife is taking credit for. We have the documentation." "This isn't the appropriate venue for this discussion," Harrison snapped. "I agree," Alani said. "A courtroom might be more suitable." Just then, the dinner bell chimed. As guests moved toward their tables, Alani found her place card at Evelyn's table, strategically positioned with a direct view of the stage. Throughout the first 2 courses, Serafina's composure began to fray. Her laughter grew brittle, her movements jerky. Finally, she could take it no more. She stood abruptly, tapping her champagne flute for attention. "I'd like to thank you all for supporting the Future Leaders Fund," she began, her voice tight. "I'm especially moved," she continued, her gaze locking onto Alani, "to see how our cleaning lady managed to afford a $10,000 plate. Perhaps we should check the silverware count before she leaves?" A wave of shocked murmurs swept the room. Alani remained perfectly still, her face a serene mask. Then Evelyn stood. "Since we are acknowledging special guests," she announced, her voice resonating with authority, "I'd like to request everyone's attention for a brief presentation that is highly relevant to tonight's fundraiser." "We haven't scheduled any presentations," Serafina sputtered. "Consider it breaking news," Evelyn replied, nodding to a hotel staff member. The ballroom's massive projection screen lit up. The first slide showed the official financial statement for the Sterling Vaughan Future Leaders Fund. "What are you doing?" Serafina hissed. "Financial transparency," Evelyn replied coolly. The next slides were devastatingly simple, showing incoming donations juxtaposed against outgoing charitable distributions. "As you can see," Evelyn's voice narrated the corporate execution, "of the $3.2 million raised last year, only $112,000 went to actual educational programs. The rest," the next slide showed a web of offshore accounts, "was directed to administrative expenses." Serafina lunged for the podium, shouting, "This is slander! Lies!" In her rage, she stumbled, crashing into a champagne tower. Glass shattered. The room fell silent. "My wife is understandably upset by these baseless accusations," Harrison stammered, trying to regain control. "Baseless?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "The SEC and the IRS received our full report this afternoon, as have the major media outlets in this city." Prominent donors began to stand and quietly make for the exits. "This is a foundation issue," Harrison insisted, his voice cracking. "Vaughan Global bears no responsibility." "That's an interesting position to take," Alani said, finally rising from her seat. All eyes turned to her. "Especially since Vaughan Global's new sustainability initiative was announced as a partnership with that very same foundation, an initiative built entirely on my intellectual property." She let that sink in. "That's fraud, Mr. Vaughan, corporate and personal." She looked directly at him. "You're a cleaning lady," he had said to her once. "I'm a Howard University MBA graduate with 3 patents pending." She corrected him now, for all the world to hear. "And I've had some very interesting conversations with your chief competitors about licensing my technology. They seemed quite impressed." The board members' expressions shifted from shock to cold, hard calculation. "But that's not all," Alani continued, pressing her advantage. "My second patent covers a sustainable building maintenance system that would reduce Vaughan Global's operational costs by an estimated 34% annually. Based on your current portfolio, that's roughly $47 million in savings per year." She paused. "You thought I was beneath your notice because I cleaned up your messes, and that's why you never saw me building something that could either save your company or help your competitors destroy you." The room had transformed. Alani was no longer an intruder. She was the center of gravity. Harrison Vaughan, for the first time in his life, looked small. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Ms. Reyes," he said, his voice strained. "No more private discussions," Alani replied. Here are my terms. She held up one finger. First, a significant minority ownership stake in Vaughn Global, 12.5%, reflecting the value of my technology. A second finger. An ethical oversight committee for all future acquisitions, with myself as chairperson. A third. A legitimate scholarship foundation for overlooked MBA candidates, properly managed and transparently funded. And a fourth. Serafina's immediate and permanent resignation from all company and charity positions. That's preposterous, Harrison blustered. Harriet Williamson, the longest-serving board member, interrupted him. The board, she said, her voice cutting through his protest, would like to review Ms. Reyes's patents, immediately. Serafina, her face a mask of humiliation and rage, turned and fled, her red dress a bloody stain against the white marble. No one watched her go. All eyes were on Alani. In the adjacent conference room, she laid out her life's work. When she was done, there was a long silence. The board will consider your proposals, Harriet Williamson said finally, her voice filled with a new respect. Outside, the gala was over. The glittering illusion had shattered. As the board deliberated, Alani stood alone by a window, looking out at the city lights. With the table so dramatically turned, will she choose the path of revenge or the path of transformation? The most dangerous thing in the world is a woman with nothing left to lose, and the most powerful thing in the world is a woman who is finally ready to win. 3 months later, the world was a different place. The Sterling Vaughn Future Leaders Fund had imploded under the weight of an SEC investigation. Serafina's offshore accounts were frozen, her assets seized. She accepted a plea deal, probation, massive financial penalties, and court-ordered community service. The media delighted in the irony. She was assigned to teach financial literacy in low-income schools. She and Harrison divorced quietly and messily. She disappeared to Palm Beach. He took an early retirement and retreated to a smaller, less influential life in Arizona. The Washington Post ran a front-page story, From Boardroom Floor to Boardroom Table. How Alani Reyes Exposed a Billion-Dollar Fraud. The hashtag #InvisibleInnovators trended for weeks as similar stories of overlooked and exploited workers surfaced across the country. At an emergency shareholder meeting, the board unanimously appointed Evelyn Reed as interim CEO of Vaughn Global, and Alani's licensing agreements were finalized. She secured an 8.5% ownership stake, less than she'd demanded, but still making her a multimillionaire overnight. More importantly, she was named chairperson of the new Ethics and Community Impact Committee. Her first act was to transform the predatory acquisition of a minority-owned property management firm into a genuine partnership, saving the business and creating a new model for community-centered development. We should be lifting businesses up, not swallowing them whole, she told the board. They listened. Her cleaning technology division, launched as a subsidiary of Vaughn Global, was an immediate success. Prestige Cleaning Services, Marcus Thorne's company, became the flagship partner, its contract renewed with new requirements for fair wages and benefits. The newly renamed and restructured Reyes Reed Scholarship Foundation awarded its first grants to MBA candidates from underrepresented backgrounds, with all financial records made publicly accessible. On a Tuesday morning, Alani arrived at Apex Tower at 8:15 a.m. for her first board meeting as Director and Chief Innovation Officer. She walked through the main lobby. "Good morning, Ms. Reyes," the security guard said, handing her a permanent access badge. The elevator ascended directly to the 80th floor. Her office, Harrison Vaughn's former corner suite, waited for her name already etched on a brass plaque. Inside, she found Evelyn. "Ready for this?" Evelyn asked. "I've been ready for years," Alani replied. After the board meeting, Where her proposal for new ethical investment guidelines passed unanimously, they held a press conference. A reporter called out, "Ms. Reyes, how does it feel to go from cleaning the executive bathroom to having your own corner office?" The room tensed. Alani looked directly into the camera, her voice calm and steady. "The most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate the person you've been taught to look down on. My position has changed, but my purpose has not. I've always been focused on improving systems and creating more ethical ways to operate. The only difference is, now you're all listening." The video clip went viral. That evening, she celebrated with Sophia, who had accepted a position at a minority-owned investment firm, turning down offers from Wall Street giants. "Following your footsteps, Mom," Sophia had said, "making the path wider for others." 1 year later, Alani stood at a podium in that same hotel ballroom. This time, she was hosting the inaugural grant ceremony for her own foundation, the Taylor Innovation Foundation, funding startups led by women and minorities. Montgomery Industries, under the joint leadership of Evelyn and Alani, had become a model for ethical capitalism. After the ceremony, near the service entrance, she saw a young woman in a hotel uniform watching the proceedings. Alani approached her. "I'm Alani Reyes," she said, extending her hand. "Gabriela," the young woman replied, her handshake firm. "I know who you are. Everyone does." "Are you interested in business, Gabriela?" "I'm studying sustainable architecture at community college at night," she said. Alani retrieved a card from her clutch. "Our next entrepreneur workshop is on Tuesday. Your ideas matter. Your position is temporary, but your potential is permanent." Gabriela stared at the card. "I couldn't possibly—" "I said those exact same words once," Alani interrupted gently. "I was wrong, so are you." Later that night, back in her office, overlooking the city, she straightened a slightly crooked picture frame on the wall, an old habit from a different life. The boardroom table was set for the next day's meeting, the same table where she once gathered confidential documents in secret. She looked at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. The woman she had always been, finally seen. Did this story move you? Alani's journey from invisible to unstoppable is a powerful reminder that our circumstances do not define our worth. Here at Goliath Chronicles, we believe in the power of stories like these to illuminate the resilience of the human spirit. Dignity can't be taken away, only surrendered. And sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody notices until it's too late. If you connected with this story of quiet strength and calculated justice, smash that like button to help more people discover it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Goliath Chronicles for weekly content that showcases the overlooked heroes who rise up against impossible odds. From the shadows to the spotlight, we share the stories that society needs to hear. Now, we want to hear from you. Tag someone in the comments who deserves to be seen for their true potential, not just their current position. Tell us about a time you were underestimated, or share how you're making space for overlooked voices in your community. Because at Goliath Chronicles, every voice matters, and every story has the power to change the world. This is just the beginning.